This week is homecoming for UNM. Game starts at 7. Officially, it's 7:55 is when the game is actually going to kick off, but 7:45 is the TV window. This is the first time Nevada has been here in 9 years.
That's amazing.
It's a quirk of the schedule. We were supposed to host them in 2020, and of course, we all know what happened in 2020, so we did not host them. And then quirk of the schedule with everything flipping around. They have not been here in 9 years, so it's the first time for them. The last time they were here, we're going to knock on wood. That game was a night game that ended at 1:10 in the morning because of lighting delays. We did win it, so we're fine, but we don't want that again. At least not the 1:10 in the morning thing. So again, homecoming kicks off. It's on FS1 with their main announcing crew of Dan Helly and Petros Papadakis. With that, take her away.
Excited to be back at home after a couple weeks on the road to start the league. This will be a big game. Big game for both teams. Obviously, we've lost a couple in a row. This team's lost 4 in a row. Nevada has had some close games. They could have easily beat Middle Tennessee State. I thought they had a heck of an effort coming back against Fresno and had chances to win in that game. I think they're pretty darn good on defensively and on special teams. Dylan La Barbarera, I think he's a first-team all-conference guy that anybody in the league would like to have. They've struggled a little bit on offense, but I think this number 6, Carter Jones, showed some, certainly some positives last week, and I think that's probably going to help them settling in on one guy rather than trying to shuffle in a few guys like they were before. And Coach Choate's a good coach. Have coached against him a lot in the past, and I know he'll have his team ready. He's the kind of coach who's kind of good when they're dealing with adversity and things like that. So I expect them to come out and play us well, and excited for the opportunity.
With some more time to kind of look at the tape and digest Saturday, what were some of the things that you kind of ended up seeing that maybe you didn't quite, kind of key in initially?
I think their D-line kicked our tails. I think our D-line played really well. I think we got to keep making sure we got to put guys in the best situations. I thought sometimes they hurt us when we got them in 2nd and long. They got back to 3rd and reasonable, like running the ball sometimes, where we were in a little bit more of a pass defense on 2nd and long. So that was good by them. Something we got to make sure we're looking at. We got to keep doing a good job finding ways to get open against man coverage. And sometimes at this point in the season, it's not always that we're going to get that much better at getting separations. We may have to have, crossing routes and, stacks and bunches to help people get off press, because that hurt us in the game. We have to be more physical and run the ball better and take less pressure on that. We got to make better decisions at quarterback so we don't turn over the ball as much. We got to keep working on forcing turnovers and creating them, which we've done a poor job of this year. I think that's probably the area that needs most improvement on defense. I thought we showed good mental toughness again and, battled even though we got down early. Was very pleased with the defense's first 2 snaps. So I don't know if there was a lot different than my observations off the field,
You kind of touched on it earlier too. I think like 4 of their 6 games have been decided like in the fourth quarter. What are you seeing out of Nevada on both sides of the ball at this point?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think they got a really nice defense. I think they've gotten put in tough spots because their offense has struggled at times. They have not. Similar to us, this will be a great battle that could decide the game. I think we're -10 in turnover margin; they're -11. So let's see who 2 teams that are poor on that, who can get it right in the game, because we both can't be -3 in this game. One of us has to win that battle, though I guess it could be a tie. But I think their O-line's okay. One of their O-linemen played for us at Idaho, Jack Foster. There's some guys I'm familiar with. Their starting tight end played at Eastern Washington. He's a solid player. I think they do a good job schematically on offense. They give you a lot of. They give you on balance. They give you some split back packages. They give you a quarterback run game. They go formation into the boundary. So they have some. I think stuff that's tough to defend and gives you some issues that you got to really get lined up too well and communicate. Obviously they're going through a tough stretch. I'm sure they're disappointed how they played last week, especially coming home, because I really did think they battled their tails off to get back in that Fresno game. So we got to expect their best, and we got to have a great week to prepare and take advantage of being back at home.
On the turnover front, I mean, what's your approach to kind of telling Jack like how to approach it? Just, I mean, do you feel like he's trying to make plays, or do you feel like it's bad balls or anything like that?
Yeah, I think he's trying to make plays. I thought, I probably felt a lot worse about the turnovers this week than last week. I think we got to just do a better job in the pocket, protecting yourself once you go to scramble, because I think he had made the decision on that one that he was not going to throw it. We have to secure the football in the pocket. And then, I think the second one, and Coach Slice would be the first guy to tell you, we probably didn't put him in the best situation with the play call. We kind of had a all or nothing route trying to throw, DT on a 5-yard out at the sticks. And then when that was covered, he went back to a route that he really shouldn't go back to. At that point, he probably should have just scrambled or came back to the other side, though those routes weren't open. And then the third one, I think, probably he got hit the 2 plays before. I thought that influenced it. I think he could have stepped up in the pocket and thrown for a conversion. So, better decisions. We got to protect it and honor it. The good news is when we're -2 or better, or 2 turnovers or less on offense, we're undefeated. Just when we're 3 turnovers or more, we're 0-3. So if we can somehow not have 3 turnovers, I feel pretty good about our chances.
And then looking at this week, just with where Nevada's at, I mean, this is going to be the first time in a few weeks where you guys are favored. So how much are you kind of looking at this weekend as an opportunity to kind of get some momentum back and get back on track?
Yeah, you got to take advantage of your home games. I told the team that, again, we're sitting here, 500, 3-3, and we have 4 of our last 6 at home. We have to take advantage of that and, take it one game at a time. But, we do a great job of defending our home field and playing well. Should put us in a good position to be in a bowl game. So, I think we're a good football team. We got beat by some solid football teams the last couple of weeks. Obviously San Jose State lost last week, so that doesn't look as good. But I think they have some injuries at quarterback. Boise's a very good team. So, we just got to keep getting better and improving. But this is a huge game for us.
Coach, you mentioned their tight end, Jet Carpenter, Jace Henry as well. I mean, they run a lot of the 12 personnel. They're phenomenal blockers. What have you seen from the tight end in the run game, specifically from Nevada? Yeah,
they like to use their tight ends. Those guys are experienced dudes, solid players. 11's really big, he's like 270 pounds. There's a few times where I thought he was a lineman, just looking at him in a stance. But they like to use those guys. They want to be a physical team, run the ball, similar to us.
And then what stuck out from head coach Jeff Chode when you faced him when he was the head coach of Montana State, when you're at South Dakota State?
I think he's a good motivator. I think he does a good job with special teams. That's a lot of his background. They always have a good special teams aspect to the team. And I think he does a good job of getting his guys ready to play. So even though they're off to a bad start, again, I don't think he's going to get them ready. I mean, he's a fiery guy, and I'm sure he'll have them fired up and ready to come down here and play.
And then you mentioned the pass rushes as well. I mean, Maldonado's on that other side too. How do you neutralize just such guys of this caliber?
Yeah, we got to do a good job. 32, they're 9 is a very good player, but 32 is, I think, a great player. So we got to get him blocked up. We got to make sure that our game plan doesn't get in harm's way, too much. We got to make sure that. When a team has a great player like that, you certainly don't want to have that guy beat you. You feel better if, Paxson hit some jump shots rather than Jordan scored 50. So we don't want him to destroy us. We got to do a good job, whether we got to chip him, whether we got to double team him, whether we got to run away from him. We got to make sure he doesn't beat us because he's pretty unbelievable pace. I think he's got, 14 TFLs and leads the country. And he leads their team in tackles, which you never see a D lineman lead their team in tackles. I'm fact-checking myself on that, but I'm pretty sure he does. You never see that. Usually it's a linebacker. Sometimes it's a safety. You're not as good on defense if it's a safety, but he's good.
Coach, how important is it to kind of turn around the rushing battle? You guys obviously didn't win the rushing battle last week, but Nevada, they gave up like 150 rushing yards a game. So how important is it to turn around the rushing battle offensively and defensively?
That's a big part of our recipe for winning games, and I think that's a common theme these last 2 games that we've lost the rushing battle. So it's a fine line because we're getting later in the season. We're actually cutting back our practice a little bit just to make sure we're fresh. I have concerns of that, especially on defense with how many plays we played last week. But we still got to have physical work and good versus good, and knock people off the ball and create some create some movement up front and dent the line of scrimmage. Again, I thought we did a lot of good stuff defensively, on first down, especially stopping the run last week. But we got to do that again, and we got to be improved on the offensive side.
And then what about the running backs specifically? What are you looking out of them or from them this week?
Yeah, I think we got to have a little bit more making some guys miss. I think I saw that Boise only missed about 4 tackles in that game. So part of it is we got to get those guys more so that they're in one-on-one situations with defensive backs. But then when we get those one-on-one situations, we got to make some guys miss when we have those and try to turn those 7-yard runs into 27-yard runs, get some more explosive out of the run game.
Do they help Jack? When he has like a balanced running game behind him, make it easier.
No question. I think when you can run the ball, that is very helpful for your quarterback and helping with your play action game, keeping the D lineman honest. You look at like Jack's last series in the game where they sacked him, then they hit him after he threw incomplete, and then he turns it over. The dudes were pinning their ears back. They knew we were down. I believe 25 at that point or something, so we had to throw it around, or 24. And they were coming. They were rushing ears pinned back. So definitely running the ball is the way we want to stay balanced. And, you look at like the New Mexico State and the UCLA games, those are games where we had more tailback rushing attempts than pass attempts. That's really our ideal formula.
And final question, how big is it playing at home compared to playing on the road? I mean, what influence have the fans had on you guys so far?
It's great to play at home. And again, our fans have been good in both games. Again, I'm realistic enough to know we're not going to have as good of a crowd as we had against New Mexico State after losing 2 in a row. But I still think it's just a better feeling when you're at home. You got more people here supporting you. You're not dealing with hopping on an airplane and things. So I know we're all excited to be back at home, and we got to take advantage of that.
Now that you've had kind of a few days to kind of look back at it, how would you kind of assess how the secondary stepped up with all the injuries?
I think it was solid. I think Bear Levels did a solid job. I think there's still some things he can learn from. He had a holding penalty that I don't think had a lot of effect on the play, but he did have some bad technique and was probably more grabby than he needed to be. I think Frankie did a good job playing in the slot for the first time. At the nickel spot, John Johnson played well. I thought our safeties played well. Tavian and I thought C.J. McBean had one of his better games, if not his best game. Speech played solid. Gant had his best action. I think he'll have a lot of things to learn from there. So, I think they played solid. We had a few miscues. We should have been better in our coverage with our post player on the 4th and 2 play they ran for a touchdown later in the game. But, there'll be some good learning because I was a young guy who hadn't played as much.
And I know the injury report will come out a little bit later, but I mean, are you expecting some of those guys to be back this week?
Yeah, we're optimistic. We haven't practiced yet, but, like Abe Williams is supposed to practice today. We'll see how that goes. I'd say, Richard Pierce, we're still waiting on. He has an MRI tonight, still in a boot at this point. So, I think he's, I don't know, questionable or doubtful. We'll see how he comes along. He's pretty tough, I know that. So, but Abe is, I think, the big one that I hope that we're going to get him back this week.
We were trying to flip the switch on getting a better start to the game. Weren't able to really do that. I'm not talking about the delay or whatever penalty, but opportunity with 4 of the last 6 games at home, maybe flipping that switch, obviously.
Yeah, we're looking at some things just to change our pregame routine. We're going to do it a little differently for this game, to try to do that. And it's a little tricky, Joe, because really it's offensively we got to start faster. I thought our defense's first 2 series were awesome. To get the ball at the 18-yard line against you and hold them to a field goal, and then we throw an interception, and then they hold the team on downs. So, to only give up 3 points off of 2 turnovers, I thought the defense did start fast. So it's a little bit more, we got to get the offense, going and starting faster. We got to make sure we're doing a good job with the staff of really executing our openers. I know, Slice told the offense that yesterday that, 3 of our first 4 plays had some execution errors. And, those are the opening plays that we're scripting and we're practicing a lot. That can't happen. We got to coach that stuff up better to make sure that's there. So, we're going to tweak some things and we got to coach up those little details to make sure we execute those plays so that no matter what the defense does. And Nevada's a real multiple team. I think that's one thing they do that makes them challenging. They do a lot of different stuff on defense, a lot of different looks and fronts and coverages and personnel packages. They do a lot on special teams. Like every time they punt, it's a different formation. So it's, we walked through their punt formations last night, and it's like, well, we're walking all through all of these, but we know that none of these are going to be what we get. They're going to have something brand new for us. So it's just trying to teach basic rules of how we're going to get a line depending on how they do it. So, and again, I told their staff this week, the more they do, the less we got to do so we can execute it as a high level. Because if we try to do a lot of stuff against their lot of stuff, that usually the little details aren't buttoned up as much as you want them to be.
You and Schleiss have kind of made the point in the past that, Jack is one of the smarter quarterbacks that you guys have ever coached. I mean, how have you seen him kind of work through this 2-week stretch where he's just kind of turned the ball over far too much and just kind of needs to be better in that regard?
Yeah, I think he understands that. And again, like I said, I think these, the turnovers in the last game, I looked at a little differently than the turnovers in this game. I think these included some bad decisions where last week I really didn't think, anywhere he was going with the ball was a bad decision. I think he's got to keep his confidence. He's got to focus on, the process and how he prepares and, trust his training and, just get better every day this week. But, he'd be the first to tell you that, hey, I got to protect the ball better and do a better job with that.
In terms of the other injuries as well, I mean, are you expecting Buckley and Dimitri, some of those other guys, to maybe get back this week too?
Yeah, Buckley would be like a bowl game type thing. He's going to be out for the regular season. Dimitri's still kind of up in the air.
And then in terms of, not asking you to give away the game plan, but you kind of mentioned earlier in some of the struggles to get separation, maybe throwing crosses in and stuff like that. Is that something we can expect to see this week, or is that kind of you flip the game?
We'll see. And, we got to see how they play us. They probably play, 30, 35% man. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if they played a little bit more man against us, so we got to see how they're playing. I thought we made some good adjustments last week as we saw that Boise was playing us some more man. We got to some new plays at halftime that helped us out. One of those third down conversions where Bankston gained 16 yards was a halftime adjustment play that we put in to try to get a good matchup in man of getting our backs on their linebackers, and that was successful twice. I mean, 2 of our third down conversions were on wheel routes to the back where we got them matched up against the linebacker. So we better be ready to have answers for man. But again, they're multiple. They'll play a lot of cover 3. They'll play a lot of quarters, as well. So we got to have zone beaters as well.
And we've talked about some of the the causes, physicality and execution and all that too. I mean, what has to get better in general for this run game to kind of get back to the level that it was earlier in the season?
Yeah, I think we got to knock people off the ball better. I think we have to make sure that we're stressing people with our schemes, and we're doing a better job of putting the guys in the best situations. And, I thought we had a few runs last week that were kind of uphill looks, and, you're not always going to be able to check out of stuff in a loud environment like that. But, sometimes it's better if that look could come up and we don't have great answers, or we just got to block it absolutely perfect to have it be good. I mean, maybe that's a play we shouldn't be running. We want to try to have something attack in another area. But, I think we got to get back to being creative. You look back to the UCLA game, and, we kind of had a new play that we executed really well that gave them some problems in that game. We got to have some, creativity that hopefully can, give something that Nevada has to adjust to. But then it's being physical. It's knocking people off the ball. I think we're going to, keep playing Jamar a little bit in the offensive line. I think he's done a good job of being physical. We'll keep fiddling with what's exactly our best lineup, for creating movement and knocking people off the ball.
Coach, you guys are 3-3. Or 3 of those wins, 2 were at home, 1 was away. But when you look at those losses, they're all on the road. Do you think you have a team that's struggling to perform on the road?
Not really. I mean, it's harder. Most teams have a better record at home than the road. I think that's you're more the aberration if you're better on the road than at home. So I wouldn't say that. I think if you did the composite like computer rankings of the teams we played at home and the road, I think we played better opponents on the road as well, which I think factors into that. So I think we got to keep our mojo going at home and play very well at home here. And I'd love to be at this press conference next week talking about being undefeated at home.
I guess, can you just talk about, I know that you've, really made an effort to connect with alumni and the history of Lobo football, that stuff. With this being homecoming this week, can you just talk about the, excitement, importance of homecoming games and kind of how you kind of plan to approach that?
Yeah, I think it's outstanding whenever we can have alumni back. I think it's always special when we have people come from out of town or come through a distance and make a sacrifice to come back. I love when former players are here. I know we had a lot of former players who were back for the New Mexico State game, which was great to see. Urlacher's coming back for this game, which will be great to have him back for a game. I think it's a big deal with homecoming. Do we have a parade? Is there a parade? Usually there's a homecoming parade. Do we have one?
I've never been on campus for a parade. There probably is one, but I don't. I'm very focused on us.
It's homecoming. You should have a parade. So we got to make that like the traveling trophy. Let's get a parade lined up. I don't know if this year's too early, but
I'm sure there is something.
Should have a parade with homecoming. So down Route 66, it's a historic road. Let's shut it down. Let's have a parade. So homecoming's fun. It's fun to win on homecoming.
Big parade guy, apparently.
Yeah, parades are nice. Kids like it. They throw gum and candy out to them. Fourth of July parades are my favorite parades because I can kind of enjoy the parade. I can't really enjoy the homecoming parade. Probably should have like a pep rally for homecoming too. So homecoming planning committee, get on that. Yeah, because we had a nice pep rally for the New Mexico State rivalry game, the chili roaster game.
I like the parade enthusiasm. Richard out. The two deep has Novell, I believe, going in, to left tackle. Malik moving back inside the left guard, and then Jamar at right guard as well. Yeah, what kind of? You talked a little bit about Jamar earlier. But what kind of foresaw that? I
think Jamar's playing well, and I just think looking at who's available. I think if Richard does play, he's not going to play the whole game. He'd probably be a rotate in, see if you can get a couple series from him. So, I just thought that's our best series. I think Mook is a solid player, but I think Jamar has been playing better. So we thought that was just our lineup right now that's going to give us our best opportunity to run the ball, move the ball. I wouldn't be surprised if we still get Mook in, for a series or two, because, Nev and Jamar haven't had a game yet where they've played, every snap type thing. So I don't know if we'll be able to just roll with that lineup. But, I think those guys have played well, and you play well, we're going to play more.
I felt like we haven't checked in on some of the D tackles in a while. I felt like Booker and McIver kind of did some nice things on Saturday too. Those are younger guys and all that. How are you seeing them kind of develop to this point in the season, and what do you think they're getting better at?
I thought both those guys played their best game, and I was really proud of Jalen. He didn't have any busts, which was some of the things he had issue. Book still had a few things that he's got to clean up. That we made Jalen our defensive player of the game just because he played the most he ever played. He was productive and he did his job, which is what you really want when you have a guy coming in from off the bench. Play really hard, make a couple plays, and do your job. So that's good to see. And I think we got to keep being careful because I think some of those times on second and long, a lot of times we sub those guys out in those passing situations, and that's sometimes where Boise was hurting us. The one that really kind of stuck with me is they had a 2nd and 17 in the red zone, and then they run it and get back to 3rd and 6. They run it for 11, and we have more of a pass defense in. And we got to keep being creative of how to balance that. Making sure we're sound against the run, because a lot of times when we go to that posse package, we're pretty small up front. Those are our two big guys who are in there. But I thought our D line took a big step up, and we had 11 TFLs against Boise at home at their place, where their offensive line's not dealing with crowd noise. Notre Dame had 4 TFLs the week before, on the road, when Boise's O-line was on the road dealing with crowd noise. So I thought that was an impressive, performance with getting in the backfield and creating disruption. And, we got to do better now. If we're getting 11 of those, we got to have 1 or 2 of those where we punch it out. You got to break, force a fumble or get a sack fumble on one of Keyshawn's sacks to create a turnover to try to set some momentum up for the offense.
We talked about some of Jack's decision making, in the passing game in particular and all that too. Were there any snaps on Saturday where you kind of felt like Jack really needed to kind of run that one instead of throwing it, or how are you looking at that right now?
Yeah, I think the first interception they threw on the vertical to Keegan, the number 7 intercepted. I think that would have been a time he should have ran. I think the other interception he had was probably more of a step up situation, and then he was going to run on his fumble, but he's got to secure the football when he does that. Get 2 hands in the pocket on the ball. So one play comes to mind, right off the bat of one where he should have ran it rather than throw it.
And then you mentioned on Saturday too, you guys weren't quite able to get to it just because of the flow of the game. But you guys kind of had like a package for James and all that you wanted to use. Is that something we can kind of expect going forward too?
Yeah, I just think I think if anything else, and again, Jack is our guy. We're not. I thought James led a great series and was very proud of him. The guys that were in there to go finish, but that was really James with most of our first offense against their backups. So I think that gives us great confidence in our backup, but I don't think a series against their twos is not enough to say, hey, he's going to be our starter or anything. But I think it does give me a reminder that we've had plays up every week. Even going back to Michigan, James got in a few times on the goal line to run it. We got to keep having those plays, and I think we got to make sure we get to those, because sometimes we've had those plays in the game plan but just haven't gotten them called. And I think it's good to get those things called, because you want to use all your weapons, and I think he's a talented young man who's done a good job, and have a lot of confidence in both those guys. Thanks, fellas. Appreciate you guys.